A very good morning to you and welcome to Morning Express. My name is Trix Ingado. Today on the show, as usual, we take a look and do a deep analysis of what's being covered by local and international press. And today being a Tuesday, we shall be having Political Point, where we talk about the biggest political discussions in the country. The BBI is one of them, and of course, that crisis in the health sector. Stay tuned for that and much more. So let's take a look at what's happening in the papers, but we start off with what's happening in the international headlines, and we're starting off in the region. As per usual, we take a look at Tanzania. The Citizen is one of the top media agencies in that country, so let's take a look at that and see what they're leading with in this morning. Now, what the Citizen is saying this morning is what Magufuli's cabinet move says. I mean, they're taking a look at the political news in that country. They're also giving us a tally of what's happening in as far as the coronavirus tally is concerned. Tanzania is at 509, and we do know why that number is low. They have not been giving us an update as far as their numbers are concerned, so they're stuck at 509 all the way since April. Then we have Uganda, 23,200. Rwanda is at 6,191, while Kenya right now is at an incredible 88,579. And now we have a health crisis with medics downing their tools. So we shall see how that will be affecting the numbers in the next few days. But take a look at more political news from Tanzania on this website and get yourself informed. But let's move to the west, whereby we are told about what's happening in Uganda. Inside government's growing iron-fisted approach to dissenting voices. We do know that it has not been pretty for the opposition in Uganda, and we are seeing here a scene whereby a motorbike rider is being clobbered by a police officer. This is just a sample of the many gruesome imageries that we have been fed by the media from that country. A fortnight later, the country descended into an orgy of bloodletting, is what this article is telling us. Get to know more about the political situation in Uganda as they lead up to their general election. Far from that, let's take a look at the East African. Kenya's COVID-19 death toll hits 1,531. Unfortunately, though, the number of recoveries, however, is at 69,414. We're told Africa losing 25.7 billion to fraudsters as well, using tax havens. Take a look at that. Get yourself informed. Let's move on to the west of the world, where we're told on the CNN website at the top there we have is an alleged drug kingpin investing millions in Laotian port. Take a look at that. This is news from Asia. And then on the political front, we're told Trump to travel to Mar-a-Lago, but aides unclear about the final month in office. That transition that is proving tricky for the Republicans is making headlines, as well as Trump admin denies reports it turned down chance to buy more Pfizer vaccine doses months ago. Take a look at those websites and get yourself informed. But on the local front, we have the Daily Nation, the Standard, as well as the Business Daily. We shall be sampling some stories from those papers and seeing what makes headlines and what you need to be focusing on today. Joining me for that discussion that kicks off the show is Agri Chabeda, and governance expert, as well as Honorable James Gakuya, Member of Parliament for Embakasi North. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you for having me.
Now, let's start off with the biggest stories this week, and it is expected. There's one of the ones that would make it to the front page of the Standard this morning. Patients stranded as health workers strike hits services. Tens of thousands, the paper says, of nurses and clinicians across the country made good their threat to boycott work starting yesterday over poor working conditions. They vowed to resume duty only after their demands were met. And we have heard the stories all the way from last night here at KTN, where we're told about how they were suffering, people waking up early enough to go get medical attention only to be given referrals or to wait in queues all day. So I'll start with you, Honorable Gakuya. What do you make of this situation?
Oh, let me say that it's a situation which is a no situation, and which is of a serious concern.
Yes.
Take in consideration that, in fact, this is a high time that we have high numbers of this COVID pandemic data reports every day, with probably an average of 1,000. And this tells you that, in fact, this is the highest time that we require to have the nurses, the doctors, and everybody else that is in that particular line on duty. But when you find this team on strike, it tells you something is not right. And the big question is, what is the ministry doing in terms of making sure that the demands set by the nurses and doctors are met? Because one, I don't find it very anyhow difficult. And the last day, Kagwe was responding to the issues to do with Cuban doctors,
yes,
where he gives Kenyans assuring that he will provide, the government will provide vehicles for them, and he will, the government will also do what we call add their contract.
Right.
The contract will be supported by what we call other resources, including housing. This tells you that actually we cannot be very much taking care of outside doctors when we are forgetting that we have our own here locally who we demand, we depend on them, because the number for Cubans are very few. They are less than 200. But here we have various number, various all over the Kenya barriers. And I think we don't have to see this kind of a situation at this particular time. So what I would urge is that the head of state and the Minister for Health should, with very, very swift drive, make sure that this strike is over and make sure that they provide what is necessary. Because issues to do with the PPEs for nurses and doctors is not an excuse at all, because there's no way that it can handle this serious matter of COVID without these protection measures. And therefore, it tells you, you may have very less budget, but you may scale other budgets elsewhere and combine those resources to make sure that this particular area of health sector is taken care of.
Right, and across page 2 and 3, we have a splash of what the situation is in the hospitals. We are having patients failing to get treatment in the Rift Valley. It's across the nation at the coast. The pictures have been sampled from across the nation, and the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers chairperson Peterson Washira addressing the press right there with his fist up in the air in defiance. And of course, at the end of it, it's the people that are suffering, and the leadership seems to have failed. Agri Chabeda, when you look at this, the sampling of the situation on the ground, what comes to mind and what are your feelings towards it?
I think my feelings are, number one, we've seen the cycle of complaints by the medical profession, and it always comes to a head when there is a crisis. Like right now, there is a COVID crisis,
yes,
and that's exactly the time that the medical profession tends to up the ante. I think this suggests that as soon as a crisis is over, perhaps the government doesn't follow up on negotiations in a serious manner, and that they then feel that the only time they can do it is when there is something that is going to attract the imagination of the nation. My view is some of the complaints should be dealt with very quickly because they are not monetary. Like we can't have PPIs and other medical equipment lying at KEMSA and no decision has been made on how they'll be released.
Indeed.
So, yes.
Yes, and on the second part, we shall dig deeper into that. On page 4, there's actually a story relating to what you just said, Mr. Chabeda. KEMSA says Kagwe has the last word on the 5.9 billion PPE that is badly needed across the nation. Now, let's take a look at another story that has been trending since last week. On page 20 of the Daily Nation, we're told about spilling the beans. Now, Governor Sonko alleges a bribery plot in 38 billion budget impasse. Now, this is just a development to the woes that he has been facing recently. So it was called to have to look into the issue of his ouster. When you see this, I'm sure you have been keeping up with that, Honorable Gakuya. What comes to mind?
Me, I would say that it has been lice and mouse prey along the corridors of the county and the NMS, and we have seen a lot of drama. What I can say is that at the end of the day, the sufferer is the common mananchi, because all these irregularities are not there to assist the common mananchi. What the common mananchi deserves now is service delivery, and this does not care whether the delivery is coming direct from the governor or whether it's coming from any agency. At the end of the day, our JICO wants water issues being fixed, roads being fixed, flood rates being fixed, and everything. But when we have what we call this cycle of, yes, we cannot be able to approve this budget, I am finding the governor trying to take these Kenyans into a ride and in back-timing kind of scenario, that he's coming up with what we call allegations. These allegations are not proved, so I cannot stand with him when he's trying to tell us that actually there are this bribery issue. Bribery issue for what? There can be a bribery issue, but I don't think that the bribery issue is towards approving the budget.
Yeah.
If the budget is nil, what is up to deny the budget? Because there's no way you can run this county of Nairobi without budget.
Indeed.
And no agents will come to approve the budget is not you and your office. Yes.
This article further says that, okay, that's just the detail of that allegation. MCAs were paid millions to induce them to pass the Sonko memorandum on budget. Mr. Chabeda, your take.
Yeah, I think, like the honorable gentleman on my right has said, that this is a game of musical chairs. We see now Governor Sonko alleging bribery by the government. I don't know how a government bribes, but we also read reports last week that a lot of MCAs were flown to Mombasa, housed, accommodated. To me, that is bribery as well, because there is, for no other reason would you want to take people away from performing their civic duty of going to the legislature. Two wrongs do not make a right. And I think what's going on is really a shame to the whole country, because as we go around, running around in courts, doing all sorts of things, Nairobi is bleeding. And that's not right. And
Honorable Gakuya, don't you think this is a lesson perhaps in how we vote? Because all these people involved in this were voted by the people, voted in by the people.
I would say I concur with you. This is a good case study, because Nairobian current, in this particular situation, they have run well. And I think this is a mistake they should not repeat tomorrow. This tells you that, in fact, right from the, you are taking time of taking your candidate for any singular or position. You must think twice before you cast your votes.
Yes.
Make sure that, in fact, you take time to consider the list of the contenders. When you are taking somebody, make sure that is the right person, because this is we are in this particular situation because of mistakes we did. And let me tell you, every single mistake has consequence, and the consequence we are undergoing now as Nairobi is that we are in dilemma that we elected the governor in our own vote. He was not nominated, so we created that particular mistake from the beginning, from that particular aspect of populism.
Yes.
Because actually we bought populism, but we never moved for what we call ability to lead. And therefore, that's why we are in that particular mess. And I urge Kenyans, whenever you are casting your vote, just make sure that you have evaluated that candidate and make sure that the candidate has capability to lead the direction or the position you are electing him to.
Mr. Chabeda, don't you think, would you agree rather, that the next person or the next candidates that vie for the Nairobi gubernatorial seat would then look to tap into that particular demographic that the current governor and leadership tapped into, because clearly there is a gap that needs to be filled when it comes to the grassroots and people feeling that they are being heard?
Yes, and I think the need to look at Chapter 6 of the Kenyan Constitution just comes to mind again in terms of vetting of candidates and looking at their credentials, their credibility, their ability to lead without bringing what we see now happening, because we are actually now sowing, reaping where we sowed. We have a governor who is elected. He's in trouble. He's using the legal mechanisms to stay in power and to frustrate whatever else has been put in place to try and get Nairobi running. I think these are lessons that should be learned, and so that they are not repeated going forward. And I don't think we have a lot of time left. We have only 2 years to the next election. I'm not so sure that within that time, we will be able to change the methodology with which we get leaders nominated through the parties. Yes.
Okay, and that actually is quite good. As we look at the battle for that 37.1 billion shillings, there is, of course, a story here that with an interesting title this morning. We're told Uhuru's love affair with the military. The head of state has encouraged Kenyans to be like the military for the sake of the country's development, and this is in lieu of discipline and integrity. Honorable Gakuya, what do you make of that? Perhaps there's something to be learned from the armed forces.
It is very true that this country is totally aiding, and it's like almost every other single Kenyan is affected by what we call corruption cancer.
Indeed.
And this particular mind is like it is totally increased to the minds of Kenyans. You find that we don't put our country first. And it has totally changed from our institutions. You look in the manner in which we learn our institutions. A case study of our airways, which is Kenya Airways. You find a situation where this particular airways is doing very good and has become a pride of Africa. But in terms of end result, you find that the airways is nosediving every other day, and the government is trying even to support it in every other day, but it is not coming on its foot. Then you find we're asking ourselves, what is aiding us? And what is aiding us is that particular element of what we call corruption. That is a vice that I am not sure what we are going to do so that it can come out of our mind, because it must start with every single individual. And I don't know at what universe we will be able to find ourselves at, so that we can ask ourselves, where did this rain started raining on us, and how do we bail ourselves out of this, so that we can put the interest of the nation first, and our other vendetta interests are behind us. And that's the only way we can take this country forward. If we are not going to take action in making sure that our youth actually learns differently from the current state we are, then we are going to have tomorrow a product of youth that actually is also mixed in this particular saga of corruption. So I think the president, as a head of state, has a duty to start training our youth on how they can come with clean, sober mind on how they can take the direction of this country and how they can put the interests of the country first. I am telling you that even in the quagmire we are in, every other cycle of after every election, general election, is that we have put tribalism very ahead of us. And we are putting it as it is the game of the day. Kenyans must come to an age to forget about I am a Kikuyu, I am a Ruya, I am a Ruo, I am a Digo. And reason as a Kenyan. Because when you are outside of the barriers of country, you reason as Kenyans there outside. Why do you bring this tribalism when you are in? This is a totally bad situation we are in. And the current leadership should start a roadmap of making sure that we are changing this country to a better direction, other than those barriers of those clanism, those tribalism, and the corruption route redemption should start from the head down forward.
Okay, and indeed, this was during the inauguration of the Kenya Nimimi initiative, whereby he did speak there, talking about gender equality, dealing with unemployment, and things such as, respecting women and including them in leadership and decision-making. Mr. Chabeda, what did you take from this particular article, and do you think the ball is in the court of the youth, as Honorable Gakuya says?
I think the youth's biggest strength will be in their votes, in electing into office people of integrity, people who will then make decisions on behalf of the whole nation that will move us forward. I do agree with Honorable Gakuya that corruption has been a big millstone around our necks. I think one of the first places where we can start as we go forward is our parastatals. And our parastatals were set up to be private institutions. They were meant to be run in a way that was more efficient than they would otherwise be if they were directly under the hand of the government. What has happened over the years, of course, is the manner in which the directors are appointed has been haphazard. Some of them do not have the right people to lead them. Others do have the right people, but the underlying similar trend in all of them is they are micro-controlled from the ministries, either through the PSS or through the CSS. And because of the way that the directors have been put there, they are unable to guide these organizations in the direction that they should. And then it percolates. Now, because those areas, those people are not elected, that's why I'm saying it's an easy win if we could start by streamlining them and allowing them to run the way they were meant to run.
Right, and as they vote also, perhaps the youth should be part and parcel of the leadership. Perhaps that would aid in answering some of the problems that we face, or rather solving them. Now, let's take a look at another story that has made headlines both on the front page of the Standard and the Daily Nation. This has to do with Machakos Senator Boniface Kabaka. This is the main story in the Standard. They tell us the senator's 21-hour date that ended in ICU, and this is now culminated into an attempted murder probe. Last Thursday afternoon, Senator Boniface Kabaka drove to an upmarket Nairobi apartment where he was joined by a woman. Then we're told 21 hours later, he was rushed to hospital unconscious. Police are now investigating an attempted murder as what transpired in 3D remains a mystery. That's the Standard, and that's on the front page. We're told on the front page of the Daily Nation, teacher charged with attempted murder of Machakos Senator Honorable Gakuya. Pretty unfortunate ending to what would be expected, given that it's a good time.
It's a very miserable handling.
Yes.
And this teacher is a learning case study that not everybody is a friend. Mm-hmm. And also, what comes very clear here is that it can sometimes you may have a friend who might turn against you, and this tells you that probably this particular friend of senator is not a new friend, because I don't find a situation where you can have a friend of a single day with an invitation, have at least a leisure of about 21 hours, and at the end of the day, then you become unconscious and collapse. Unless that particular woman have a motive that must have emanated from somewhere, but not an incidence of that particular day. Mm-hmm. And this tells you that probably this love was not that a single day love. It was a love that has taken maybe some ages, and where probably there were issues unconcluded, and maybe the thought that arises to this particular mind of this lady, probably to a poison senator, because maybe out of a game that was never collected. But what I can say to conclude is that I am sure the doctors have taken their time to do what we call testing, and at least it's only them who can guide the police to do clear and aware, neutral investigation. Because today I cannot be able to say whether it is true or not until when those particular reports will indicate that actually this was clear poison. And if that is the case, then nobody else can answer that but who was very close to Senator. And if it's this lady, then at least he'll be able to tell the police what were the issues behind this particular exercise. Yeah,
but Honorable Gakuya, there's something to be said about the fact that he ditched his driver and security personnel. What's your comment on that?
I would say that the senator is a man who has been tasked with the driver and security. But I can tell you that, in fact, sometimes when you are in your private occasions, like this one, you may excuse them so that at least you can also have your privacy. And therefore, probably that is why the bodyguards and the drivers were not at the scene in that particular moment. And I believe it's advisable that you cannot be full-time under what we call that surveillance of your bodyguard. Sometimes you need to have what we call flexibility.
Indeed, you would know. Now, because of course you do enjoy those privileges. Now, Mr. Chabeda, what's your take on this one?
My take is I'm a bit perturbed at the speed with which we are going and condemning a lady who visited somebody who willingly invited her to meet. It's probably true that they know each other, I don't know. But within 24 hours, the police have already come with big terms like attempted murder. They've even told us it will be murder if he dies. Very language that is a bit perturbing. Somebody is in hospital, is in ICU,
right,
and you're already anticipating his death. I think we should allow the medical professionals to tell us what is wrong with our senator, give him an opportunity to let the family come around him, let him recover. And as the information comes, then it becomes easier for us to connect whatever the police want to conclude about this case. Again, there is a lot of connotations around this case about which is mostly a very masochistic man with a woman, and you find that the word woman is always being used to imply something very negative around a man. I think there is absolutely nothing wrong with two people willing to be together, meeting. We don't know what has caused the senator to be in ICU, and I think we should wait for the professional results to come out.
Yes, this is true, and we will conclude that particular discussion of press review with an excerpt from this article that says the matter is of public interest. Considering the victim is a senator, it is necessary that the police are given ample time to complete investigations into the allegations of attempted murder, and then all conclusions can be drawn based on evidence and the good work of those security personnel. Thank you very much, Agri Chabeda and Honorable James Gekuya, for being a part of Press Review. We shall be taking a short break. When we come back, we continue on with Political Point, where we take a look at some of the biggest stories, the BBI, and of course the situation with the health sector. So stay tuned for that and much more.